Hey folks, it's Fernando doing another video for the More Survivalist. I thought it would be interesting to do a video on current world events, what's happening right now. Especially I want to address the situation with Russia, Ukraine, the price of oil, and what we're looking at right now, what's happening, and what may end up happening in the future. You know, no crystal ball here or anything like that, but it's analyzing why things are happening right now. It's kind of possible to at least have a general idea of what's coming. A few days ago, I did a post in my website, The More Survivalist, about the economic crisis right now in Russia with the devaluating currency. And I actually got a couple of very interesting comments. One from someone obviously Russian over there. He says, "Hello Furfel, hope I can provide some inner view of the situation. Yes, ruble fell up to 80 rubles per dollar at Tuesday, but 2 days later $1 is 59 rubles and price is going down. This was clearly a speculative attack against national currency because there are no fundamental reasons for such a drop. Actually, some people who don't have much rubles on hand just laugh, others spend money on large TVs, new cars, or something like this. We have survived at least 2 such crises at 1998, yeah, his English is not obviously perfect, and at 2008. And currently we don't see anything worse than in those years." Yeah, I completely agree that you know, the situation in Russia, even though far from ideal, you know, lots of inflation is never nice, but it's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna be collapsing. Russia's not gonna be collapsing in any way, even though it's getting hit hard by all these sanctions and the measures being taken against it. Now, it's funny to notice some of the things that he's telling about, you know, people doing over there, such as buying large TVs or buying new cars. All things that people in Argentina did and still keep on doing. You know, they did it in 2001 when the currency was falling apart, and in the beginning of this year as well, when the currency took another, dropped quite a bit. People ended up buying, you know, when you have 30%, 40% inflation each year, it's not something, you know, these guys in Russia, this is the United States taking measures and sanctions and such, and they see their currency drop all of a sudden. This is Argentina every single year dropping 30-40% inflation and pretty much the money melting in your pocket. So what do people do? They start running, seeing where they can spend the money before it's not worth anything else. So they buy TVs, cars, apartments, you know, anything that they can put the money into and at least somewhat preserve the money that they had in something solid. So why is this happening and why now and such? Well, several factors. We have, you know, Don Williams actually makes a couple interesting comments here. He says, U.S. sudden courtship of Cuba may reflect the ongoing confrontation Washington is having with Putin. I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, to me, it's so obvious that the United States is starting to get into a good relationship with Cuba right now because it's obviously in their best interest, and it's a very wise decision to do that. At the end of the day, I always prefer when governments at least try to find some peaceful common ground of some sort, even though we always know there's always things going behind curtains and such. But at least when people are when countries are getting along a little bit better, it's always better. At least that's the way I see it. So, but we don't have to be naive. I mean, this is happening right now because it's like sticking Russia with a stick or you know, it's a way of showing Russia, you know, Cuba, your ally, now is in good terms with us, so it's, you know, screw you, Russia, right? That would be the interpretation. Strategically, it sure has a huge advantage because you go from having an enemy island just in front of you and you're outside of your coast. You go from having that to not having that problem anymore, which it's, you know, it's great. Whenever you can avoid having enemies that nearby, that's absolutely fantastic. Something similar with the price of oil. All of a sudden, oil is dropping like a rock, right? all of a sudden oil is cheap. I mean, what happened with peak oil? What happened with all that nonsense that we've been fed so much? You know, we were told that oil was never going to be dropping, and all of a sudden, what oil is? Well, and you start reading some articles and you see different explanations. You see people saying that because of fracking, all of a sudden there's tons of massive new oil resources being found, and there's lots of new potential places to tap for oil and such. Some of that is true, you know, especially with fracking. You're able to take advantage of oil in places that it was not possible before. So all of a sudden you have new sources of oil. Then you have oil being found in different places. It is true to some degree that you have less consumption of energy. In some cases you have vehicles being more fuel efficient. The idea of fuel efficiency, you know, LED lighting and such, smaller cars, I think that to some degree, but I don't think it's nearly enough to justify such a huge drop in the price of oil. I mean, come on, let's be honest. Why is oil suddenly dropping like that? You know, the thing is this: each dollar that oil drops, that's costing Russia $2 billion. All right. So this is yet another way of saying, screw you, Russia. We're destroying you economically, and we're pretty much provoking you economically as well. New laws being passed recently in the United States, and Ron Paul, you know, you always have to read Ron Paul because he's always on top of all this stuff. Ron Paul was writing about some of the laws passed kind of secretly, you know, new sanctions for Russia, and authorizing the sale of weapons to Kiev. So, you know, two pretty important things. I think that only 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans were against it, but you know, that was that. So you have all this to some extent a revival of the Cold War, which in many ways is no longer cold, it's quite hot, especially in Ukraine. And Ron Paul was making some points about this being orchestrated from the start by the United States and its allies as to have the conflict in the region, have the conflict with Russia. Now, you may be asking, why start a war? Why start conflict with Russia? Why? Well, at the end of the day, you have to justify the defense budget. You have to justify the military contracts, which are massive. I mean, it's pretty much the engine that keeps the economy running. So you have to justify wars. At the other side of the spectrum, on the other hand, you have ISIS, which is, you know, another huge mess. But there you have already war going on, and you can justify some military action not that long down the road if, you know, it's already taking place to some degree. So right now we're standing here. What is it that you can come to expect in the future? More war in Middle East. Yeah, I mean, especially with ISIS and all the, you know, the very much obvious campaign that's going on. You never know who's actually fueling many of these things. You know, you can speculate and such, but you can see that there's going to be conflict there down the road, and the budget is going to be justified to some extent thanks to that. Now, the thing is, I really don't like messing with Russia. I think that Putin, or Putin, whatever you want to call him, I think that he's pretty much nuts, and he's capable of anything. As crazy as he sometimes looks, he's not stupid. So I think that an all-out war is maybe not as likely, but you know, he's Putin. He's not exactly someone that you want to mess around with. So I'd keep an eye on that. I'd be pretty much careful. I'd expect more sanctions like these to keep on having an impact on Russia. How far are they willing to go with that? Oh man, it's hard to tell. I mean, as long as it's scary enough so as to justify the military budget, the military contracts, as long as it's enough so as to justify that, especially when you have ISIS and you have the conflict in the Middle East already going on and creating a new conflict so as to make economic sense. Then I think they're not going to be pushing so much on something as dangerous as starting a war with Russia, right? But you always have to stay on top of it, staying alert of what's going on and such. So, folks, that's pretty much the situation as I see it right now. I see the oil prices staying down for quite some time, especially as long as it's hurting Russia. They're going to be keeping those down. And not only Russia, it's actually hurting, you have Venezuela as well, which is pretty much oil dependent. And, whenever you can say, screw you Venezuela as well, that's also great for the United States. Any of these opposing governments, any of these opposing countries that you have that you can impact them economically, you're going to be going for that. I think it's good, if we can find something good out of all this mess, better relationships with Cuba. You don't have. I think that is in general it's mostly good. You have good, you have bad. You have some people actually pretty pissed with this newfound friendship with Cuba, but at the end of the day, I think it's better, especially when everyone is so close nearby one another, especially when you have Putin on the other side, with a potential conflict going on there. You certainly don't want Cuba against you. So that's the situation as of right now, guys. Just be prepared for it. As always, these are all things that are, if it's not this, it's always going to be something else. You always have to be understanding of what's going on and have a better idea of the risks down the road that you may be dealing with in a future. And the more information you have, the more wise decisions you'll be able to make. So guys, that's it. Take care. Have a great day. Remember to subscribe. My books, The Modern Survival Manual, Bugging Out and Relocating, both linked below, which you are going to be finding of use. As always, take care. Have a great day. See you in our next video.